David, welcome and thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
David, let's talk a little about the Future Fund. You joined there as chair some 6 months ago. When David Murray became the initial chair and then Paul Costello as the general manager some 6 years ago, there was a lot of time and effort invested into putting together one of the best sovereign wealth funds in the world, the talent, and fortunately through that period the fund was not invested, so it also had the benefit of missing much of the worst of the global financial crisis. The fund is now $79 billion, and I believe you've come in and improved and changed and altered the strategy and also the structure of the Future Fund. Tell us a little bit about that, please.
Well, the first thing I'd say is my predecessor, David Murray, came along and he was the only employee at one stage, and he recounts interesting stories when he was one of three. We now, 6 years later, have come to a maturity, and it's thanks to him and others who have played their part in taking it from an idea, a very good idea, to something that has a maturity as an organisation. Yes, we're not the most peopled business of all time. We've got 82 employees. But on the other hand, we have a complete structure. We are invested, and we have, as you rightly say, received the money and the shares that we were given, and we have sold down those shares. We've invested a lot of the money, and we're a proper organisation. And that's to their credit. What I've come into, therefore, is something much different to what David had when he started. And what I think I've brought is, as I've said in my earlier answer to your question of yours, I've brought the same sort of thinking as what I'd do in a very public listed company. I believe, for example, that we need a complete committee structure of our board. And so what I inherited was an active audit committee and a board. I've now established, for example, a risk committee. I've established a committee that is to look at the governance of how we operate. I've established a conflicts committee. Now, each of these committees are manned and womened by people from the board. And I've asked them to get very involved in what they're doing, and I have to say they have come to it wonderfully, even in the 5-6 months that I've been there. We're evolving. We started with one man, a terrific man, with a vision, with a good concept given to him by the then government, and he built something. We now have to take it from its maturity to its blossoming, and this is the way I think we have to do it.
David, on the recent re-election of President Obama, there's a documentary that illustrated Obama spending 2 and 3 nights each week on his own in his home office, just thinking and writing and strategizing. Interestingly, it also said that Clinton did a similar number of hours on his own each week, but was on the telephones rather than in thought. Is that also a key function for a good chair, to be spending a lot of time just putting their thoughts away and thinking what the best strategy is and what the best decision is?
I think that it is in a way true of a chair, although I wouldn't say the chair is as powerful as the President of the United States. But having said that, in my opinion, a chair has to do 2 things. One, they have to clearly in their minds know what their role is. And that, as I said earlier, is sometimes very difficult. And they have to fulfill that role, but not try and do the roles of others. And the second thing, and that actually is very pertinent to what you said a minute ago, they have to know what are their strong points. Now, for example, if you have the charisma of a Clinton, you should be on the phone all the time. You should use your charisma within the terms of your role. If you are a good strategic thinker, then you should use that as well. If you're not so good on one and better on the other, then you should swing it the way you do it. The worst chairs I've seen are people who try and do a role the way somebody else did it, and they don't have that prowess. Because in my experience, all people, particularly those who've risen up to the roles that, being chairs of big super funds or whatever, they have strengths, and you should play on those strengths, but within the role that's designated for you. I think that one of my principal strengths, which many, by the way, would say might be a weakness, is that I've come up as a consultant. I was, as they say, born a lawyer, and then became a merchant banker, but always was consulting. I've never been a CEO. To be blunt, the naysayers would say I've never run a company. But what I have learnt, and I've been around a long time, is I've learnt that my abilities to listen, my like of people, and my, I think, ability to allow people to get on with what they're doing and facilitate them is, if I have any strong points, my strong point. And therefore, for me to get up and say, I'll do this, I'll do that, is the wrong way to do it, for me. And I understand the role of chair, I understand the role of a non-executive director, and I have to say, I think that's a very important thing to understand.
Philanthropy is one of your key passions, and many of the people in this room are already very much engaged in their own philanthropic endeavours. But please share with the room why you're involved and why you find it so fulfilling.
The fact is that I have found that ever since I left university, that my crusade for a good career for myself has actually been narrowing, not broadening. And I have actually worried about myself as a human in terms of this lack of broadening. And I've found the not-for-profit space has given me that broadening. Whether it be being involved in a big university, whether it's been in the arts, and I'm hopeless at all aspects of the arts, and I loved every minute of my involvement in the arts and still do. These have broadened my mind. I think that philanthropy, be it in time and or money, can buy you effectively the most enormous add-on to one's own life. And I believe, I'm sure there are people in the audience today who also, and many people say this is a real egocentric way of life, but I'm also worried about my legacy. And I'm not really, what's the word, keen to just leave a whole pile of directorships where I batted hopefully well or reasonably, and the team didn't get out during my period. That's not the legacy. The legacy, I think, has to be more bold, that you've actually contributed, made people's lives better. Those who are chairing large super funds have the ability to do that within their organisations. People like myself, who are probably more in focus smaller operations, and obviously the Future Fund is a big one, but that's just one I've come to now, don't have the opportunity that I've just mentioned. But you can get it through the not-for-profit space, and you can get it by backing, be it scholarships, be it whatever, because you can change lives directly.
David Gonski, thank you very much for the generosity of your time and information.
Thanks, Colin.